What's up? We're live, and now everybody can party with us with the music, if y'all can hear it. Hopefully it worked out. Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with my co-hosts. This is Scott Moon and Chuck Manley. Tonight, we're talking about developing character through dialogue. I think it's going to be a great episode. I think it's going to be fun because dialogue is pretty much my favorite thing to write of everything. So I think it's going to be super fun. Welcome everybody in the live chat that's joining us tonight on this Monday night. Let me know what you guys think about the song playing. I don't know if it's too loud. I can't hear it the way that you guys can hear it.
It's really loud.
I don't believe you, Chuck. I don't believe you at all.
Yeah. Guy says, kill the music.
That's awesome. Welcome. Everybody, thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. And if you're listening on the audio feed, come and check us out on Mondays on the YouTubes. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and share us around. We're trying to get to 1,000 followers on YouTube this year. So if you could let your friends know, let your peoples know that what we do here, come and tell them to subscribe and like the channel. We appreciate it.
You know the music's still going, right?
Is it? Because I can't hear it.
Oh, yeah, it's still going.
Yeah, dude, it was going the whole time you were talking.
I thought you were doing that on purpose.
No, I was not. I could not hear it. Thank you for letting me know.
No, it was jamming.
Bill, they're like, hey, kill it. Josh, kill it.
Dance party, though. Am I right?
Make it stop.
Am I right? Hey, you do some things, you try them out. You see if they're good.
Oh, that was pretty good. All right.
Good times.
We have to have a signal for
cut it.
Killing or something.
You need to do some like you're lining a plane and you've got the two wands and you're directing different places.
Bard made an excellent observation. I'm the only one that's going to survive the show because you two are the red shirts.
We are the red shirts. That's right. I'm wearing my Smith Chiefs jersey this week. In celebration of the Super Bowl coming Sunday. As you can see, I am ready.
Do you have a jersey for every day of the week leading up to Super Bowl? Or
no,
just one?
But if they win the Super Bowl, I will buy every jersey they have and just wear them
every day.
Completely. Yeah.
That's a sporting event, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's get into the show and talk about some stuff. I hear something.
Do you guys hear? Do you have a
ghost? Did you turn the music off?
Do you have a ghost?
You have a gremlin or?
I don't know. I heard somebody talking. That's very weird.
I think you have a ghost.
Okay, this episode is brought to us by Tom Hottle and GoFundMe that he reached out and talked to me about for his wife who was in a car accident. I'm sorry, had a stroke. And she's in rehab and trying to pay for that. I'm going to put the link in the live chat, and we'll talk a little bit about it later in the show. But he reached out to me and wanted me to share it. And, of course, I said yes. So if you can and have the ability to, please check out that GoFundMe and help Tom and his wife out. That would be greatly appreciated. Scott, what did you have going on this week, man? Because I finally got back into my groove of writing, and I want to talk a little bit about that, but I don't want to steal all the showtime from you.
I did a lot of editing. I was kind of like, if people that are in the January word count, Keystroke Medium word count challenge will see that my words they kind of vacillate. So like I'll have like a 300 word day and a 3,000 word day. A lot more of the former, but I've been doing lots of edits. I'm finishing a project while I start a new project. I got that done. I sent the final version of Reaper 9, Hunt of the Reaper, off to Cheney tonight. It's going to the formatter. So that should be coming up this week.
Nice.
And working on the next one and so on. But yeah, so I've been coming back and forth between editing and revising and then working on new words, which is obviously the most fun.
And you're working on the last book of the series, right?
I'm working on book 10 right now. It's the final book of the last Reaper series. And I'm actually really enjoying it. I was surprised how much I'm getting into it this time. And then I'm working on a few other projects, like always, as time allows. Trying to think about other stuff that's going on. Work's going okay. Started going to the chiropractor again today. That was fun, except expensive, but that kind of helps. So
what's crazy I think about chiropractors is that they've been around for, I don't even know how long, since the beginning of time. They do a lot of good work and people get a lot of good relief from them, but it's funny that they still don't consider them like doctors. Like they have a doctorate in chiropractic medicine. They go to medical school for, I think, longer than an actual doctor. And it's funny, when I have uneven hips, and so wearing a gun belt for so long and sitting in a car, it was really starting to irritate my back. And so I went to the chiropractor. He took x-rays of my spine and hips and all that stuff, and determined that because of the way my hips kind of tilted and the way everything kind of sat on the gun belt, he was like, yeah, that's really messing with you. And I said, what about a drop holster that would sit lower on my leg and not push up against my hip when I sat in the car? And he was like, oh yeah, that's great. Like, he looked at the x-rays and was kind of doing measurements and stuff, like, yeah, 100%. And he wrote up this whole paper. It's probably like 3 or 4 full paragraphs. And he said, yes, here you go. And so I took it into work and I said, hey, here's the deal. This is what I got from my chiropractor. I've got x-rays to show you all the deal, all the stuff that's wrong and how he suggests to fix it. And they're like, yeah, that's not enough. We need something from like a real doctor.
That's crazy.
I'm like, okay. Yeah. And so I went to my family doctor and I told him what I had done. And he said, okay, go up and sit on the table. And he put my legs up and kind of measured and looked, and he said, now, what's this thing you want called? And I told him, and so he goes, okay. And he pulls out his prescription pad and he goes, I recommend a drop holster for Officer Hayes, and signs it, rips it off and hands it to me. And I go, what? And the department took that. Not the the evidence that the chiropractor had given.
Put so much effort into.
Yeah, the little note on the prescriction pad.
Well, if it was 3 pages long, they probably didn't even read the whole thing.
No, they didn't read it at all. Yeah.
I'm sure they didn't. Sure they didn't. I have 2 compressed discs. I think it's L1 and L2. My lower back. I have a subluxated middle back. I have what they call soldier's neck, which is probably from a car wreck that I rolled a car end over in. Basically means my neck. I can't do. Where's the camera? My neck. Your neck's supposed to have a little bit of a curve. Mine's like completely straight. They call it soldier's neck because soldiers get it more in a helmet.
Oh yeah.
And then I have my left leg is longer than my right, which is causing me problems. He says that's because my pelvis is out of alignment, kind of like you're talking about.
Yep.
And then a few other things. So I'm a hot mess. A lot of that comes from recreational violence, that I've participated in over the years.
Yeah.
Like Walt's talking about jujitsu. He says he goes to jujitsu instead of a chiropractor. I kind of go because of the jujitsu sometimes. So
yeah. True
but
story.
It all works. Although my hips been bothering me for years. If you've been around me much, I complain about it all the time. But the last few times I went to jiu-jitsu, my hips felt great afterwards. Like getting smashed really helped me out. Like, can you please hurt me a little bit more?
Yeah.
I feel so much better afterwards.
It feels like some kind of dirty movie. Like, hit me harder.
Smash me. No, but yeah. So
Chuck, what about you, man? What have you been up to this week?
Same old, dragging the kids around. There's been a lot of just bullshit drama with my daughter's softball coach, and kind of got wrapped up in that. And I did do something new though. You guys started the spreadsheet thing that I was kind of joking about, because I don't ever, just for the hell of it, I decided to try to learn to use Excel, and I made myself one, and I'm actually been trying to track, to see if it helped kind of keep me motivated.
Right.
And I've only been doing it about a week. And I don't know, I can kind of see, it's like I do think about it. I do think about, what am I going to be able to put anything but a 0 in there today? I mean, and it's not like it's not like it's not like a shot in the ass to get me going, but I do kind of be like, why didn't you do that, buddy?
Right.
Yeah. A little accountability. Well, accountability, whether it's, through yourself or through like a team or partner or group. I mean, sometimes it does that. I actually quit chewing tobacco about 5 or 6 years ago, and I'd done it before, but the time that it stuck, every day I'd write down the date that I didn't chew. But and I did it on a legal pad, but after I got to about 10 pages in there, you're like, I can't break the chain now.
Yep.
Because I'll have to start over with a new legal pad.
Right.
And that worked. And so that was a major life change.
Well, what kind of, you guys talking about the KSM-RIMO thing got me kind of thinking about it. And then I've got this other thing going on where I'm currently on a 90-day no booze break.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got this little app on my phone that keeps track of the days since I've hadn't had anything to drink. And, and then that just kind of was like, well, maybe, it works because I don't want to have to reset it back to 0. And I was thinking, well, maybe it would work if I tried to do the Excel thing. So.
That's also a Jerry Seinfeld, a famous Jerry Seinfeld quote. I don't know if you heard that, where somebody, a comedian asked him, how do you get to become a good comedian? And he said, get a calendar. And every day you write jokes, you put an X on the calendar, and then you make a chain of days in a row that you worked on improving your jokes or wrote a joke or something like that. And it's the same thing. You make that chain, and then you don't want to break the chain.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's why, like, if you look at my workout calendars, there'll be days I have like 7 words. I literally sat down for 5 minutes. Like, I can't have a 0. And I wrote 1 sentence, and then I put the 7 words on there, and then I went on about my day.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I was at a softball tournament most of this weekend, so I didn't get anything done, and I had to put a 0 in Saturday and Sunday. And I was actually kind of like, motherfucker, stay up and write. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm just getting home. It's like, but I felt kind of bad putting a 0 in that slot, So I can kind of see how it works for you now.
It's kind of motivating in that, it pushes you to do that. And, that's what they say when anybody always says, well, I want to be a writer. What's your advice? And inevitably it's always right. And so this pushes you to actually write words, and that's how you're going to get better. I have not done spectacularly well at all. I got about 2,300 words today. But I look over the sheet like I'm looking over right now, and people are really putting in the words. And, there's people that have put in words and then skipped a whole week and then gone over. It's kind of like me. I put in a couple words and I skipped like 4 days, and then I get back at it. A lot of the days I skipped this last week, I was editing my short story for a secret project. I turned it in, I think like 3 days ago, I think. And right before the weekend.
That's the short story in the celebrity anthology kind of
secret,
for lack of a better term.
Yeah. When it comes out, it's gonna be really neat. It's gonna be really cool to talk about. But I had to finish up that story, and now I'm back on working on Enemy of Valor again. But it was cool to get that done and wrap it up. And it was nothing like what I imagined it was going to be when I started it, which I think is half the problem sometimes when I sit down to write, is I get that kind of nervous. I don't know if this is going to be any good feeling when I sit down and write. And so what I did was to get over that, I basically transcribed the last, like, almost all of the story. And then as I went back to fix the transcription, some things happened that made it a lot better, and that made it flow a lot better. And I was able to finish it, which is what I did today. I transcribed about 1,400 words in about 30 minutes. And then as I went back in to clean those up, the scene kind of developed from there, and I was able to add more words on top of the scene. So it's probably what I'll continue to do over the next couple of weeks to get Enemy of Valor done and shipped off, and it was really working for me. So
cool.
Yeah,
good stuff.
All right, well, we're talking about dialogue. Well, this whole season is going to be about story, and one of the biggest aspects of story is character, and having good characters that people want to follow through that story, because if your characters are crap, then no one is going to want to read the story. So a couple things. Oh, I wanted to mention too, on the KeyStroWriMo, we are now at 1,256,774 words for the group. We're almost within 500,000 words of our goal, which is 1.
How many people are tracking?
That I don't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well, I gotta scroll.
Don't count me.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 32. 32 people with a goal of 1,700,000, 1.8 million words. We're at 1.25 million words with a daily average
a lot.
Yeah, but my goal is 150,000 words, so I'm not going to make that. So I'm probably going to screw up our overall goal unless some other people go over. So everybody,
it's fine. Yeah,
no, everybody go over.
Look, our daily average for the group is 46,500 words a day.
Nice.
So that is kick-ass for a group of writers to be able to show that amount of work, even with zeros and not working, and like I said, it wasn't a competition. It's just kind of motivation. And so
that's the thing. And I hope everybody's been maybe doing more than they would have without it. I'm going to throw out this question for later, even though we're not quite to it yet. But Bard asks, what if you have a character that's literally a pile of crap? So we can talk about how to show that in dialogue later.
Absolutely do that with dialogue.
Let me write that down so I don't forget. Pile o crap. Okay. So we have 4 days remaining right now. Nathan Heisted is leading with 93,000 words. If you guys,
did he pull a hard at a Rick?
Yeah, he pulled ahead of Rick. Rick is at 89,000. Nathan's at 93,000. He had 2 10,000 word days this month, which is phenomenal. It's crazy. Of course, after those 10,000 word days, he had a couple blanks. So,
but Nathan's like normal days, 7,000 words or 6,000 words. So
he's crazy.
That's true.
So anyway, my question on this is, I think everybody likes it. Everybody's enjoying it, even though there are some that aren't putting in numbers, and that's fine. So my question is to the group: do we want to continue this for February? It would be very easy to make another February spreadsheet, the same setup. And if you guys would like to continue it again, like we're kind of reset on February and do some more, then I can set that up. So let us know in the chat or in the Facebook group if you guys want to continue it next month, and we will do so.
You could try one sometime by amount of time logged towards writing or editing. That, that's something else I track sometimes, is the time. Because sometimes you're just putting it, because my spreadsheets always say minutes and then they convert to hours for the total of the month on my personal spreadsheet.
I might have to look into that. We'll see.
Depends on what people want to do.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of notes here, and I guess if you guys have an idea to talk about that question, the pile of crap character, before we jump into the rest of it, we definitely can. Just to clarify, are you talking about like a bad, like a mean character? Or
I get the impression he's talking about an alien species that is an actual pile of something.
Oh.
That's the way that the statement did read. I took it as a character who's morally bankrupt, but
I mean, yeah, well, that's how I initially took it. But I've
No.
been watching the chat, and I kind of get the impression that it's some sort of alien life form.
Oh yeah, Chuck is correct. He's a pile of crap.
Yes.
Well, I'd be curious to know about that character choice and what it's supposed to do.
It's a sentient bowl of chicken salad. No. So,
through the nose.
Yes, always.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do that. I mean, if you're looking for an explanation as to the way the species actually communicates with other members of its own species, you can get into pheromones and, you know, commingling their bodies and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that. If you're going to try and convey it in English for a reader, you know, you come up with some sort of translation mechanic that your main character is using. You know, something along those lines that will make it accessible to the reader. And then you can just give it a personality and use all the typical dialogue tricks that you would throw in there. He says he was joking.
See, we've gone on a giant rabbit hole now. Thanks for that. We've gone into the
Damn it, Bard!
We got into the shit on that one.
I see what you did there. So I've got a couple like macro level thoughts about character and their voice, and then I've also got kind of a micro level breakdown of a book series that I love and then the different characters in that series. So the thought I had is, if when you're looking at your characters and you're deciding what kind of character are you dealing with, like, you know, where do they come from? What's their family background? All that's going to go into their dialogue and how they speak. And on any of these points of the spectrum, you can go overboard on making it definitive. I think, like, when you talk about, like, in fantasy terms, in like medieval Europe fantasy, you always have like the lords and ladies that speak very proper, and they always say my lord or your majesty or whatever, and then you have all the peasants that say like ye, and their English is very clipped and basically dumb sounding, and so you have like the hierarchy of people there on the way they talk. And on a very micro level, you need to pay attention to that when you're writing your characters, because where they come from and where they're at on kind of a societal level will very much determine how they talk. But then also their personality goes into that too. Like, I always think about you listen to people talk and what they say, and 9 times out of 10 people say the same. They talk the same way all the time, and a lot of times they'll use the same phrases all the time, and they'll not even know. A lot of idiosyncrasies that they just have, that they just use, and they don't even know that they use it. And so that will kind of, you can narrow down into your specific character. Does he say, like, I've got a character in my Valor series, Tinsley Jones, and one of his lines that he says is, "Hey, I'm here for you." Like, he says it all the time, and that's it's his comeback for a lot of things. And you can find things like that kind of really define and kind of bring more life into your character, that is very natural, things like that. The other thing I have is, like, a lot of us write mil sci-fi, and so the difference between like general officers and like Marine grunts or Army grunts or whatever, they're going to sound significantly different in the way that they speak. For the most part, your corporal is going to sound a lot different than your general. So your corporal is going to curse a shit ton, and the general may curse, but he's also going to he has to present himself as a gentleman, for lack of a better word. So he's going to speak more eloquently than the grunt.
There's a bunch of questions in the live chat. I just finished listening to Master and Commander, the first one, audiobook, and it's very much like you say, because they talk. I loved all the phrases, because they'll say, "My compliments to the captain, and please tell them to fire the starboard gun," or something like that. And everything's, and then the person just shows up, and they say, compliments of the captain. The captain sends his compliments. He would like you to fire the starboard gun. The speech is very formulaic in that particular setting and time. But so,
Kronos mentioned here, what if a few characters sound kind of similar, though they are very different personalities?
Well, that's when you get into things like word choice and topic. Like you can have 3 characters. Let's say you've got 3 characters all from the Deep South. They're all going to say ain't and y'all and this, that, and the other. But the nice character is going to be, he's not going to point out flaws in things. He's not going to look at the dark side of things. He's going to try to be polite to old ladies. Whereas the jerk character, he's going to be trying to tear people down and talking, mean. And, that's when you start, you put 2 characters in the same situation. Old lady crossing the street. Nice guy, he's going to say, ma'am, can I help you across the street? And the other one will be like, get out of my way, you old bat. You see what I mean, though?
Yep. No, it's true.
It's absolutely word choice and the topics that the characters choose to speak on, what they see in any given scene and any given situation. Do they see a chance to help somebody, or do they see an opportunity to steal a purse? You just got to get in your character's head and have them speak in a way that reflects who they are.
Well, and that too, and you can also have people that say what's on their mind, and people that mask what they actually feel, and don't actually say what is on their mind. And sometimes that's fun to play with too, where you can do kind of an inner dialogue of a character, if he's your point of view character, where he thinks that he's like, he thinks this is a really stupid plan, but then he says this is the best plan ever. And you can kind of play, because we all have that kind of stuff where we're like, this is the most idiotic thing someone has ever said.
But I don't want to get fired, so I'm going to go, okay.
Yes.
There's some interesting things in the live chat. Brian says a little girl's going to notice and comment on different things in a grown woman. So that kind of goes on with what Chuck says. They're going to talk about different things, or like what you guys are talking about reminds me of Standish in Richard Fox's books, because he's always talking about how to work a scam, how to get his leave, complaining about like an enlisted character. A lot of times the trope is they're complaining about how hard their life is and blah 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 blah, and stuff. Whereas an officer might not do the same thing because they're not supposed to show that to the troops or things like that. There's several others in there.
I think Bill said it depends on who the person is talking to. I've had some foul-mouthed generals talking to the troops, but they were prim and proper other times. Absolutely, 100%.
You got to be able to turn it on and off. For sure.
One of I thought of some examples of some really good character development through dialogue, where if the dialogue had been wrong, it would have ruined the character. And that's in a book I talked about last year, by Haley Stone. And it's called, why is the title losing me? Make Me No Grave. And this was a weird Western book. It was one of my favorite books of the year. It ranked right up there with Oathbringer by Sanderson. And the way that Haley Stone used dialogue in this book between the 2 characters, Apostle and Alameda Guillory.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Was like phenomenal. And if she had gotten that dialogue wrong, and even the narrative voice of the dialogue, like where they weren't speaking, but it was the narrative word choice was just on for that book, and the dialogue was just so incredibly real that if it had been done any differently, it would have ruined that book. And and that's the thing. If you're going to write a Western, you seriously need to study the way that the people talk, and not just throw in a y'all or y'all going over yonder, because
now you're getting into like a period piece.
You
go back in time, and there are very distinct dial patterns. You're writing more modern. you got a lot more wiggle room than if
Yeah.
you're writing in a certain time period.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think that actually goes to a question Bard's asked a couple of times. Thoughts on how much phonetic dialogue to include and other ways to communicate accent. Go.
I've actually I've had this happen to me twice, where I wanted to make the character German, and so I wrote it phonetically German. This happened in Terra Nova, where I made this German scientist, and when I wrote it, I made him. I can't even remember how I developed the words, but I wrote it phonetically so it would sound like he was speaking with a very thick German accent. And when I sent it to Richard, Richard read it and he was like, absolutely not. Change all of that dialogue back.
Yep.
And
but the backstory is
I did, right. And I did. And it probably did make it better. There probably would have been readers that wouldn't have been able to stand that or would have hated that.
Yeah.
But then when Luke read it, he read it as I had written it phonetically, and it was awesome. He did a phenomenal German accent, and it was great.
Which kind of suggests that the character suggests its own kind of dialogue and character traits because the character's written right. So I think to definitely go easy on the phonetic spelling.
Yeah.
Probably
mention from time to time that they have that accent.
Yeah, right. I think like using, like Ellen's a big fan of contractions and things like that were appropriate. I had read a book on editing, and the author's eluding me, but he had a whole chapter on this. But he talked about like word choice and leaving words out can make people sound like they're not native English speakers. If you leave a word out here and there, or or you use the like the noun tense a little bit wrong, then that will give a strong impression of somebody who doesn't speak it as a first language. You don't have to go all phonetically crazy with it. Just by kind of changing the order of words or leaving some stuff out. So
I've got a character that I was actually writing today in the Jack Dark book. She's one of Jack's friends, and she's a wizard from Johannesburg, South Africa. And so she has this South African accent, but instead of trying to phonetically write it, I just mentioned, periodically she said in her blah blah accent, whatever.
I've done that also. That works good.
Yeah, she'll use words. I'll italicize words that she uses. They're South African words that she sort of replaces for the English version. Like she was talking about this recipe her grandmother had taught her when she was young, but instead of saying grandmother, she said her Uma. That's a rough South African translation for grandmother. And you sprinkle things like that in there every once in a while to just sort of remind the reader, hey, this person's not from around here, that kind of thing. But you don't want to overdo it. What you don't ever want it to become is a distraction that pulls the reader out of the narrative. You want to suck them in and keep them there, and don't put any speed bumps in their way that's gonna kill that verisimilitude.
The words on the page should almost be invisible when the story is really moving. You don't really think about it.
Right.
But if you start doing all kind of crazy, really original stuff, then it drags people into the text, and you want them in their mind imagining stuff. You don't want them trying to figure out the words. So I think everybody in the chat pretty much agrees to go very careful with it, go lightly on it, use some of these techniques Chuck's suggesting.
T.S. Hottle in the chat earlier brought up Alex in the Expanse novels, and the different, not like Christian Avasarala. And Alex is he's kind of the engineer. No, Amos is the engineer. Alex is the pilot, and Alex has a very distinct way of talking, and Christian just curses all the time, and it's great. Like she curses all the time, and it's not really distracting because that's her character, and it's done well. But even in the show, it's funny. Cronus brought up Lau Pak in the Galaxy's Edge series. I think Lau Pak is hilarious. He's definitely written as a comic relief character, and he's like a Chinese smuggler kind of mob boss deal, and you know he talks like I know tell you something, or you know, just the
Right.
like the what's the word, the parrot, the I can't even think of it right now, but the what is the word?
What are they
Parody,
doing? What's he doing with the
It's the
language?
parody, but what is it when you have the comic draw you of the caricature?
Caricature.
He's
Caricature.
the caricature of a yeah, stereotypical, that too.
Yeah.
Asian person speaking English very fast and very clipped.
That's a good
Well,
example. If you leave a word out, it sounds foreign.
Right.
Yeah,
That's a good example of how your sentence structure
Yes.
can accomplish the same thing. I mean, you can make it very clear what the meaning is, but by playing around with the word structure and things like that, and having the character named Lo Pak, I mean, that's obviously some sort of Asian,
Right.
it suggests an Asian character, and then you kind of change that around, and that's recognizable enough that you know, automatically most people are going to start hearing that stereotypical Asian voice in their head.
We're probably going to have to do another episode on naming conventions as character building, because I think it's very important too. When you were talking about Alameda from Make Me No Grave, some of those names in that book are very evocative of character. But let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Right.
I think we should do that. But it's kind of related to language and dialogue and word choice, but different. So,
No, I completely agree. And look, I think we're having a good discussion, actually. A lot of the characters, like in science fiction, you'll have like in Firefly, where you have what's her name, the engineer, and she says shiny a lot, and that becomes kind of her little catchphrase. And Wash, who is very kind of dry humor. I think what really got me, and I watched the movie before I watched the show first, and at the beginning of I know, Chuck, whatever, but at the very beginning of the movie, like something happens, like the ship has some damage to it or something, and the captain gets on the radio and he says something like, everybody buckle up, we're gonna have some problems or something, and Wash is like, or no, he says it was bad, and the captain says, how bad? And he's like, I don't know, oh god, we're all gonna die. And like it was like very like dry, like, and I like that type of nonchalant type of
it's kind of
humor.
nonchalant gallows humor is what it is.
Exactly, right.
Very casual. Oh yeah, we're fucked. You know?
Yeah, it's not a big deal, we're all gonna die.
That's it.
Yeah. And you can really develop character like that, because you can develop very serious characters where they don't joke about anything.
Right.
But then if they do joke about something, that can be a kind of a turning point or a very like significant moment in the story for that character, if they do something different in their dialogue, in their speech, that they haven't done consistently. Which is something you can.
Really good when you have a character serious like that, and you want to try and show some growth, and you have them attempt to tell a joke or something like that, and have it just fall completely flat. You know, they think it's like really fun, but that can really show the difference between one character and another group or whatever, because you know the super serious person, they can be like, oh, and blah blah blah, and everybody's just kind of. Yeah, all right. Yeah.
It's like what's his name from Guardians of the Galaxy? The purple alien guy.
Yondu?
Nope. No.
Oh,
Drax. Yeah.
Drax.
Because he doesn't get sarcastic humor.
It wouldn't go over my head. I never miss. Or
I never. Exactly.
I think I'd like to talk about excited utterances as character building things.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about that. What do you have in mind?
So, like in law enforcement, we talk a lot about an excited utterances when you're under stress and you say certain things, and a lot of times those types of things are like admissible in court, or they hold more credit with juries and juries because people make an excited utterance. And you know, shit, I just had one, and now I've forgotten kind of what I was going to use as an example. Oh man, I had a really good example. I should have written that down instead of writing down the excited utterances phrases. But basically, it's not just how they say it or what their dialect sounds with or whether they're cracking jokes, but what they say under pressure. Like Sandor Clegane, there's a lot of things where like he's talking to, I think it was Sansa, and he's going on about, she says, well, you're not even a knight. And he's like, piss on knights. It's kind of an excited utterance, you know, and she shows deeply his emotional feeling, and it leads right into the crux of his character.
Right.
Know?
Yeah.
So he's like, because his brother's a knight, his brother tortured him, you know, so it's knights, and, you know, and they say unexpected things like somebody's confronting him. I can't remember what scene that's in, but he just says, I like killing. You know, and they're like, well, yeah, that pretty much defines your character. Yeah. So sometimes those exciting utterances can come out.
Well, and what you said about what you say under certain circumstances kind of defines your character too. And another,
you're talking like a robot.
Yeah, robot voice also describes your character. Okay, we'll wait.
Am I still talking like a robot now?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. So going back to Firefly, the very first episode of the series, it pretty much opens in Serenity Valley with the browncoats being shelled and all that. I mean, things are just going to hell all over the place. And it shows these soldiers, and they're freaking out. And, you know, a couple of them are in the corner huddled up, terrified. And Mal comes running in, and he's like, nah, we're not going to lose because we are so very, very pretty. You know, he's like cracking joke, and that tells you right there, this guy's a natural leader. Things are going to hell everywhere, but he's joking around. He's acting like everything's fine. They're going to have a drink. It's going to be okay. You know, so I think it's really important to kind of pay attention to the setting your character's speaking in, so that you can convey their personality.
What they say,
those outside stressors that are coming in on.
Right.
You know, what they say when they say it. You know, maybe how quickly they say it.
Consistently, Chrissy mentioned, if we're talking about character, I must ask if you have seen Avatar: The Last Airbender. I haven't seen the cartoon. The only The Last Airbender I've ever seen is the movie, which was horrendous.
Oh, why?
We went through a Airbender thing for several years, but we'd watch them all the time, and we watched them all, but I watched a lot of mine out of order. And so I'm not, but I've always wanted to start from the beginning because it's a really great story. It's a lot of fun.
I watched all of Airbender and all of Legend of Korra with my kids. So,
would you recommend just watching it just for the story?
I absolutely, yeah. It's very much the what are he's, you know, kind of the rebirth of the hero kind of story. There's a name for it. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah,
kind of the chosen one kind of deal. But no, it was. I mean, it's, you know, it's got its Asian influences, which is fine. But it's you know, it was very strong. I enjoyed it. Both of them really. And the Legend of Korra one, the one that comes after the first one, the main 4 seasons, I think it is kind of neat because it picks up at a later point in time, and it's very steampunky, and it's kind of in a city and all this stuff. So I recommend them both. I thought they were really good.
Yeah, it looks like you can get them on Amazon. I'll have to check them out.
Yeah, I haven't watched them.
No, you're a robot.
Oh, I am. Let's see. Koros mentioned something.
Last Bender watch party.
Yeah, exactly. Koro said something that speaks really to what we're talking about. What if dialogue gets carried away and delays the plot, which can happen? My books are huge, hugely dialogue intensive. I absolutely hate big chunks of narrative. Even in my battle scenes, I try to break them up by having a dialogue almost constantly through my action battle scenes, because I don't like the big chunks of words. Just to me, aesthetically looking on the page, I hate seeing like 3 full paragraphs with no dialogue. It irritates the crap out of me. And it's probably just me. I'm sure there's a lot of people that love that, but I have had scenes where I've had a conversation and like the conversation just kind of drags on and it doesn't go anywhere. And at that point you just have to kind of weigh what is the dialogue, what is the conversation doing for the story. And if it's building character, I think that's completely fine, because I think you can have character points in a book where it doesn't have to affect the plot at all. You can just have a character centric thing, and if it builds your characers, then yes,
I think
it's
the
completely
short
fine.
answer is that's what you fix that in edits. You know?
And you can move a lot of times. Like I've had times where I have like pages and pages of dialogue, and a lot of times is I just break that dialogue up and spread it out over more of the scene. Sometimes that'll work.
Yeah,
you know, you drop something in the middle to kind of like give some relief, so it's not like just a back and forth like you're doing a 2-person play or something.
You know, and as a side note, you know, we were talking about writing for audio. I don't know when we were doing that, or maybe it was Terry and Lauren and Kayleen. They were talking about writing for audio, and my narrators I've talked to says they like dialogue heavy books.
I've heard that before too.
You know, they greatly prefer narrating those because they can perform the characters.
And the trick is
as opposed to saying the sun came up and it was blah 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 blah. You know,
right?
They can actually act it. The trick is to write it, how to manage the dialogue attributions in a dialogue heavy scene, because it just depends. Be able to keep track, especially if you have multiple characters, you got to keep track of them. So you have to do, but then you get to the point where you're using too many action beats. It gets to be just as redundant as using he said or she said.
Right.
If you do an action beat every time and then the character, then that also gets redundant.
I try to kind of break them up. Like I'll do like it's kind of hard when you get more than 3 characters. You can kind of do it with 3. You get over 3 and it gets hard to do, but like you can do dialogue where you have 3 or 4 dialogue sentences without any attributes, and then you can splice in what I like to do is start the dialogue like hey Scott, Josh said, come over here, and kind of break it up that way instead of just having the complete sentence and then Scott said. But then also, so I try to mix it up and say, if I have a said or 2 saids, then the next couple of sentences down, I'll do an action beat, where he scratched his nose or something like that, something that speaks to the character. Like some characters like rub their ears when they're nervous or something like that. They just fidget, and just a little thing that has their name and an action beat that really might not affect the overall thing, but it helps the reader kind of track the conversation as it goes, and it's not always a said. Then
you got to break redundant.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know, that breaking it up and stuff you're talking about. I mean, it's also going to depend on the characters, because, you know, if you've got a character who's like, I don't know, Jethro Gibbs, and everything's a 1 or 3 word, you know, answer, and then you've got somebody who just yammers on and on and on and on and on. Yep. You know, it's you can play with the frequency of their word usage to kind of do stuff like that too.
One of the questions Kronos has is, how do you balance between plot and dialogue in a scene that requires both?
One should advance the other.
Yeah, I think you can do both. And a lot of times, this is kind of a cheat too, but when we say don't do info dumps, sometimes you can get away with doing it in dialogue. You have to be really careful, though, when you do it, so you don't have a maid and butler.
As you know,
John, the Admiral likes 5 cups of coffee before he does anything in the morning. You have to be really careful about that. But also, I think, too, that characters just talking about what's happening around them is fine. Like characters, like we talk about our day, like before we start the show, we talk about our day, and we talked about what we did. And I think that if you have characters talking about stuff that happened to them and kind of working it out between them, I think that's fine. For instance, that's a Well, it's not really a spoiler. So in book 3 of the Valor series, there's something that happens to the Saber team right at the beginning of the book. And they don't understand it when it happens. And so a couple chapters later, after it's done, they're talking about it amongst themselves, and they're trying to like work out the different possibilities of what it could have been. And so you kind of can bring up different plot points. You bring up other stuff that you've talked about in the books, and say, this happened over here. What if it's this? And kind of have the characters bounce off ideas. And then it also helps the reader kind of put together different things. If it's kind of a complex plot, they can kind of start stitching things together. Even if the characters are wrong in their assumption of what's going on. But I think that having them kind of discuss what's going on, maybe even discuss their plans a little bit, except you don't want to get too carried away with that too, because you don't want to have let's just, for lack of a better description, you have a mill sci-fi thing and they have a briefing of how the attack's going to go. And then you go through point by point by point by point of what everybody's going to do in the briefing. And then when you write that chapter, that's exactly what happens.
Which would never happen.
And it's a waste of a chapter. If you're going to have a briefing chapter, condense it, kind of hit the high points, but then when the mission actually starts, the mission goes to shit and none of that other stuff matters. Like if you need something to go wrong in the mission, then in the briefing you talk about how that needs to happen or the mission fails. And then that thing can have, when it happens wrong, it's more impactful that way.
Yep. Tom says he's talking about Scalzi explaining FTL, and he says he handles at the end of an info dump. He has another character say, "I have no clue what you just said." I've seen that used a lot. Like that's a very good technique. The other thing that what you're just talking about made me think of is that a good way to handle some of that dialogue info dump is we tell each other stories all the time. So you have an opportunity to have a character, rather than just giving facts, he can tell a story like about what happened that pertains directly to the plot. And that story itself is like a mini story and it's entertaining. So if you have characters telling entertaining stories, you can convey a lot of information without getting boring and dumb. And those stories will almost always be a little bit wrong, a little bit flawed. They'll leave some stuff out. Maybe they get interrupted. And so you can keep the tension by not giving too much information. Their story's cut off in mid thing because the officer walks in and they have to stop talking.
Exactly.
What's going to happen?
That kind of, and that kind of, I don't say pointless dialogue, but that kind of like plotless dialogue helps you kind of naturalize what's happening. Instead of going plot point to plot point to plot point, you can have, 500 to 800 words of just character development where it has absolutely nothing to do with the plot. And if you really looked at it, you could probably cut it all out because it didn't have to do with the plot, but you build character for half of the chapter. And then something happens either in the middle of the conversation or right after the conversation happens that extends the plot. And so you have like an intro of, okay, this is building character. And then it goes into, this is what we're going to do now, which I do a lot. And I think a lot of people actually, where you have like a lot of buildup, something that matters with the plot. And then, and Brian Minster says, if you're in the military, you can always get away with, so there I was. Absolutely. That's a great way to start a story. So there I was.
End with, but did you die?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then how they deliver all those things you just talked about, because each character will deliver it in their own unique way. Either they're more articulate, less articulate, more or less profane, funnier or not funny.
So one of the notes that I had written down here, as far as character, and you guys, everybody get your shots ready, whatever, in Sanderson Stormlight books, which I know some of you haven't read, but some of you have. If you haven't read them, you need to, because the characters in his books are all unique in the way that they speak for the most part. Every single character that you read in his books has a unique way of talking, and it's ridiculous how he does it. And I just have a couple examples written down here. You have Kaladin, who has actually two different ways of speaking, because in the first book you have the young Kaladin, and the older Kaladin, and so they have completely different ways of talking. You have Shalon, who talks very witty, and a lot of times she almost talks down to people when she talks. But then you have Lopin, who is really funny, and he's got one arm, and he is never negative at all. He's 100% positive all the time. And if you said he only had one thing to eat and it was a rock, he was like, I remember one time when I didn't have any rocks to eat and I had to eat the dirt on the ground, and rocks are more better than, and that's the way he sounds when Kramer reads him, so that's why I'm giving him an accent. But Rock, yes, Sanderson, Ken, I ain't got time for that. So Rock, when he talks, he has a very unique way of talking because he's from the mountains, and they have they believe that the higher elevation makes them smarter than everybody that is in the lower elevation. So when somebody says something that is actually correct, he'll say air sick lowlander and make a joke about them because he thinks they're stupid for saying it. But it's just his way of interpreting it. But he does that with a lot of characters, and he does it really, really well.
Yep.
I'm just reading the live chat now and everybody talking.
Oh no. Yeah.
Let's see. Captain Ford and Keel from the Galaxy's Edge universe has two different ways of talking, says Brian Metzer, and that's true. Because you have the military captain Ford and his militaristic way of talking, but then you have the smuggler Keel, who also has a different kind of more lax way of speaking. Let's see what else is going on in the live chat here. Jay Oliveira says, I have never read any Sanderson book.
Don't read Elantris.
What's the other one? There's
I will say that.
Okay, don't start with Elantris. Don't start with Elantris. If The Way of Kings is super hard to start. I would always start with Mistborn, The Final Empire.
Yeah.
I would always start with Mistborn.
The Way of Kings, the first one I did, and it was tough.
The Way of Kings, the first time is super tough. It even took me 4 times to get through like the first 5 chapters. It took me 4 times to do it. But
so the world building's rough because
really,
it's done.
Yes, but in his books, the world building is actually necessary, and it's
right. It is. It's
part of it to make sense.
It's crucial to the story. Consistently, Christy says, has Sanderson been on here yet? Probably not, because Josh would just die. Yeah, true fact.
I tell you what, if we ever got, and I've reached out and he's been busy, but if we ever got Sanderson on here, I just sit like this the whole time and say, like, I mess up the intro more than I already mess it up. That'd
be hilarious to see you like pour into his panel, like also you're on his screen somehow. Like, this is really weird. I'm being stalked. Then you have a PFA put out again.
That's right. I'm all knocking on his window. Brandon. By the way, his new class for 2020 is out. If you guys,
I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I saw that.
If you didn't know, I'll find a link for it because it's really entertaining. And the way he talks is a super chill and very. So the thing I like about him is that he is phenomenally successful in traditional publishing, but he has nothing bad to say about indie publishing. And he even suggests it. This is the link I just put in the live show is his the first episode in his 2020 course at BYU. So if you're interested, check that out.
Makes me want to go to BYU.
Yeah. But I think that he's got a really good way of talking and really interesting way of writing books. But anyway, back to dialogue.
So, like, if you're doing dialogue, you're trying to describe your character. Like, if they had an obsession with Brandon Sanderson, you just have them say all
Yeah,
that would show a lot about his character and kind of his motivations.
Said that.
what he does
Yeah.
when he's not in a Chiefs jersey.
Yeah.
Got a Sanderson jersey.
Oh man, I tell you,
Oh
if they
man,
win,
I'm going to get a Chiefs jersey. I'm going to have Sanderson printed on the back.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Do it. I'm telling you, if they win this Sunday, I'm just gonna lose my mind. Yeah, so I don't know that we've missed anything. I'm going back to look and see if we missed any questions in the live chat or any comments in the live
I lost
chat.
my live chat block.
I don't think we did. Oh, Guy Anthony DeMarco says this is really good. Are there any? Oh, that's the wrong one. I lost the chat. Are there is actually a fish. Blue is in there right now. Let's see if I can get Blue in there. I gotta focus. Focus.
Your camera's very confused right now.
You can see him right here. There he's swimming.
He looks dead.
He's not dead. He's swimming.
I think he's floating to the top. I think
no, he's
caught in the circulator current. That's all.
No, he's not. He's swimming. Look.
Why is he upside down?
The other ones were dead, and I could not save them. And that's my fault. I'm a horrible fish keeper.
I got fish when I was a kid, and I come downstairs and my dog is chewing on this fish. I'm like, did the dog get in the fish tank? I don't know, but apparently one of the types of fish we got at the time, I was like 8.
Yeah,
you have to buy 2 of them, or else they get lonely. And if you buy one of them, they jump out of the tank. And then we'd gotten there's these fish laying on the. Looked like I thought it was one of my sister's barrettes because it looked like a piece of plastic. It's a little dead fish that jumped out.
I had 4.
Sad.
I don't know where the other 3 went. They didn't. I told my daughter they didn't like the water and they had to go back to the store. I'm not sure what happened.
I think they swam away.
The water tested fine. I'm not sure what happened. So, whatever. Stuntfish. Ken Brett says it's a stuntfish. I like that.
Fish is a hologram.
Fun fact about Ken. Ken has volunteered to do the show notes for the show, which everybody says a very quick prayer for Ken. He is going to be doing show notes that will hopefully allow you to navigate the audio and also the video interviews and shows to get the nuggets of information that you need. He is going.
All you can do now is go to the different Brandon Sanderson mileposts.
That's right.
And use those, he'd be like, what was that one thing I was looking for? They said, I think it was 3 minutes after the 4th Brandon Sanderson reference in episode 29. And that's how you find your way around.
He's going to timestamp all the Brandon Sanderson references. That's right.
And then the other thing is when Chuck froze and we created a meme, that's our other milepost.
That's right. Well. He's going to make sure that everybody is on the same page with the show notes, and then also he's going to make sure that all the links of everything that we talked about are in the show notes, because a lot of times I'll forget and fail, and he's going to make sure that all that stuff gets done. So thank you, Ken, very much for volunteering to do that. I appreciate it, and it will make the show that much better. Look at this. J.R. Hanley finally joined the live chat. Welcome. There's a lot of shenanigans going in the live chat tonight. Ooh.
Well, he showed up and there's 5 seconds left in the show. He's probably mad. He's like, how come every time I show up, you guys all leave?
That's right.
What did I do?
Oh, JR's here. And
hey, everybody. Hi, it's the cops.
Done. Well, I thought that was a good show. I had the idea to talk about dialogue because I absolutely love dialogue.
Dialogue's best.
I think that if I was to improve anything in my writing, the dialogue I think would be the number 1 on my list. And it's also the
we didn't talk about Elmore Leonard though, because he's probably the best dialogue writer.
Yeah. We should probably break him down one episode. But I think dialogue is probably the easiest thing to mess up. It can be really bad. You can dialogue, narrative, you can write what happened. Joe walked across the room, period. But dialogue, if you mess up dialogue, then it pulls just completely can ruin the story.
Bad.
Okay, let's see. I don't know what's happening Thursday. I haven't looked at the calendar, but Lauren and Kayleen are doing the Writer's Journey on Thursday, 8 p.m. Make sure you tune in for that. Walt has another coffees and concepts coming up this week. And then also, if you didn't know, check up our YouTube channel for, let me see if I can get the link really quick. Joshua Gayu just submitted his first episode to the stream, and it is a conversation about storytelling with, hold on, I got to switch my account. It's actually a really long interview. It's probably, I think it's like 4
hours. It's really long.
It's really long, but it's really good. I've so far I've watched about half of it. It's going to be on our audio stream as well. So you can listen to it and not have to be sitting in front of your computers. George Rockall Schmidt, who has a YouTube channel of his own, and they talk about everything from Star Wars to good visual storytelling to just storytelling in general. And I think it's a really good conversation that both of them have. And it's really cool. And we're expecting a lot of good interviews like that from Josh, and that's super cool. So if you haven't checked that out, check that out. Lots of extremely fun content coming this year. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. I'm going to put up a link in Facebook to our YouTube channel. Please share it around and see if we can get as many people to subscribe as we can this year. We're aiming for 1,000. We're almost at 800.
It is really important to know that during tax season, that if you sign up to a YouTube show, you're required to sign up 5 extra people, or you could be penalized. You don't want to have that type of thing when you file taxes. So, I mean, just giving you a little pro tip there. So bring 5 people to the show.
Big deduction if you can do
Don't piss off the IRS. Sign up for the show. That's all I got to say right
now. Well, we cannot confirm or deny that may or may not affect your.
It may not be sound legal advice, but I heard it somewhere.
We are not lawyers.
But we stayed at Holiday Inn Express last night. Thank you, everyone, for coming and hanging out with us tonight on Keystroke Medium Live. I am Josh Hayes, here as always with Scott Moon and Chuck Manley. We've been talking about developing character through dialogue. If you like this episode, like it on YouTube, give it a share. Leave us a review on iTunes or Podbean, wherever you listen. That also helps our visibility and gets us a little bit more up in the rankings, as it were. So thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. We will see you next Monday, where we talk about everything about reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. Peace.
Later, guys.